Hey guys, it's Jan Sharte and I'm back again with another video. So today's video is going to be amazing. And it's going to be amazing because it's going to be filled with a lot of honesty about money and numbers and things that a lot of entrepreneurs do not talk about on the internet. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Welcome to my channel where we talk about boutiques, e-commerce, business, and all things making money online. Okay, so the internet is filled with people sharing their revenue, meaning how much money they've made. Not very many people are sharing how much money is in their bank account, and I get that. Like, nobody wants anyone to know exactly how much money is sitting in their account and readily available to spend. However, not very many people talk about profit margins or profit in dollars, and they also don't talk about the expenses that they incurred while trying to make the amount of revenue that they collected. So, my online boutique recently crossed $1 million in revenue, which I'm also proud of, and I truly believe that all business owners should be extremely proud of the amount of revenue that they collect, profit aside. And the reason that I say that is because your revenue is a direct indication of your ability to serve people. It's a direct correlation to your ability to sell whatever it is that you sell. So it's like the evidence that you've done the work. However, your bank account, and more specifically, I would say like your profit and loss statements, are a indication of where you spent too much, where you could have spent more, where you went wrong, so on and so forth. So a lot of times we share like that pretty number on Shopify, which I'm about to show y'all, because just so y'all can see it before I explain the expenses that it took to be able to make that. A lot of times we share that number, and you know, everybody gets so excited. Oh my God, that person made $1 million. And again, it's an accomplishment, but it's not a direct indication of money in the bank. It's not a direct indication of like that person's lifestyle, whether or not they're still struggling, whether or not they're still kind of living paycheck to paycheck and things of that nature. So these are my numbers up until today. There we go. So I am sitting somewhere around $1,027,796 in revenue. That is from August 9th, 2019 till today, March 12th, 2023. I've been on Shopify for like 3.5 years. I started my business on WordPress, so I actually don't have any data from when I launched my business in November of 2018 up until August 9th. I didn't have an accountant. I didn't have any like true methods of keeping track of my expenses and my spending and things of that nature. So I honestly could not tell you what my spending and my expenses look like at that time. However, I do know that this is all Shopify money. There is some revenue, obviously, that's out there that can't be accounted for. So we're gonna go base this off Shopify revenue. So I want to start off with letting you know that I did not get an accountant until I believe 2021. 2020 up until 2021, I was keeping track of my own expenses using QuickBooks. I highly recommend QuickBooks if you are not currently ready to get an accountant, because it's gonna allow you to connect your bank account and you'll be able to like categorize your spending, and you can say like, this was an office expense, this was a inventory purchase, this was shipping, this was ads, so on and so forth. And it'll give you a clear idea of where your money's going before you get an accountant. And then also, once you do hire an accountant, you'll be able to pass that data off to them, and they can use that to continue managing your books and things of that nature. So I actually have my profit and loss statements pulled up right here on this computer, because I want to give y'all an accurate depiction of what these numbers have looked like over the years. And currently I use a platform called Xero. That was recommended to me by the first accountant that I had. I'm on my second accountant now. And inside of the accounting software, there is what's called an income statement, also known as a profit and loss statement. And basically what that statement gives you is an accurate idea of where all your money went and where your money came from. So more specifically where your money went. So you'll see a section for your revenue. You'll see a section for like discounts and refunds. You'll see a section for like your inventory sold, the shipping that you had to pay for, but you'll also see money you collected from shipping. You'll see all of the things you spent money on categorized by type of expense. And then at the very bottom, you'll see your total operating expenses. You'll see your net income and also your net profit. So let's talk about what my numbers have looked like year over year as I've grown to this $1 million point. Okay, so like I stated, I didn't have an accountant and I wasn't keeping track of my numbers. So these numbers that I'm about to read off to you guys are just taking into account 2020 up until today, March 2023. So I'm gonna first tell you how much I spent in total for cost of goods. Cost of goods is gonna include the inventory itself as well as the shipping that I paid to receive the inventory. I'm gonna tell you how much I've spent on accounting. I'm gonna tell you how much I've spent on contractors or employees. I'm gonna tell you how much I spent on ads and then rent. Now, one thing that I want you to understand is that obviously I didn't have these expenses every single year. I already mentioned that I didn't have an accountant from day one. I wasn't spending, equal amounts of money on ads. I didn't have a warehouse from day one. So some of these are gonna be expenses that I started to have later on down the line. But I'm just gonna tell you collectively how much I spent. And then I want you to just take a second to like do the math of, if I've made $1,027,000, how much of that was money spent in these categories? So I got my paper here. I wrote it. I already calculated it up. So cost of goods being inventory plus shipping, I have spent $602,438.50 on inventory and shipping. So over half basically of that $1 million has been on inventory. And you want to take into consideration that some of the inventory is still in stock, because these are my numbers up until today. So obviously I'm not selling out of all my inventory. Everything doesn't sell. It's just a part of business. There's inventory still sitting. So yes, it appears that I've spent half of my money on inventory, but there's still inventory sitting that ultimately will turn into revenue. For accounting, I've spent $45,200. Now, obviously, every single accountant is not going to charge you the same amount. They all have their different rates. Some charging by hour, some have just like a flat fee based on how much money you make as a business. But that is how much I've spent, $45,200. I will say that the first accountant that I had, I think I paid $7,200 for the entire year that I worked with her. And then my new accountant, I paid $33,000 working with them last year, which is insane. Honestly, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. Didn't make sense to me personally, but I'm not gonna say that that's a silly amount to pay. I just think that for what my business was and what my business was accomplishing, that $33,000 did not make sense. They have a very robust team. They have a lot of people that are doing a lot of things for your business as it pertains to your finances, but I just don't think that I needed that. So $33,000 I spent on accounting, and I honestly regret it. Contractors. So contractors is going to include like my husband. My husband works at my office. He's literally there pretty much 5 days out of the week. I've had a assistant. I've had a email marketing manager. I have a inventory strategist. So these are all of those roles wrapped into one. I've spent $96,556, so just under $100,000. For ads, I've spent about 77. Actually, this number's not right. Something's missing. I must have forgot a year because, no, this is actually right. Now that I think about it, yeah. $77,399.03. So ads is a direct correlation to revenue, potentially, if you're running them right. And then lastly is rent. So $62,927.58. I actually just got a new warehouse at the end of 2022. My rent is $1,600 more because I needed more space, which means that my expenses as it pertains to rent have went up. So I have to take that into consideration now as I'm driving sales. So those are some of my biggest expenses. Obviously, I have other expenses. I pay for insurance. I pay for email marketing. There's a bunch of different softwares and things like that that I use to help me to drive sales and help me to grow my business. But these are my big ones. Cost of goods, accounting, contractors, ads, and rent are my biggest areas. So all of that calculated together is about $821,000 out of my $1,027,000 that has been made in revenue. Okay, so before I go into the rest of the numbers, let's talk a little bit about why it's even important for you to keep track of your expenses and why we're having this conversation. So over the course of the last few years, I have had tons of people comment on my videos or my content on social media, and I'm very honest and transparent about the money that I make or like how business is going for me. And I've had seasons where, you know, people will ask, well, what's your profit? I see you sharing your revenue, but like, how much is your profit? And I get it. You want to know that that person has the money in the bank. However, what people often don't consider is that business fluctuates. Business is up, business is down. Business isn't linear. It doesn't always go up. Even if you think about the fact of just businesses having like very heavy seasons versus quiet seasons, or like think about like after the holidays, it typically dies down. So those are typically like very quiet or less profitable months for a lot of businesses. So I hate when people are so quick to ask about a business's profit margin, because it may be trash at one point of the year and it might be spectacular at another point of the year. And then at the end of the year, it might be that they were in the negative, but that doesn't mean that that business was bad, because they might have had 7 months where they were extremely profitable, but 5 where they were not as profitable. It doesn't mean that they didn't take any money home. It doesn't mean that they weren't able to pay themselves. It doesn't mean that they weren't able to pay their bills or pay their employees or buy whatever it was that they needed to fund the business and fund their lives. It's business. So even if you look into the financials of some of the world's biggest businesses, you'll be able to see their revenue, but you might also find that they are not profitable. It is literally a part of business, but it does not indicate that they broke. It doesn't mean that they're broke, okay? So I wanted to say that because it's not frustrating to be asked that, but it is frustrating to realize that so many people don't understand what business and expenses are actually like. So I want to talk a little bit about managing your expenses and the importance of keeping track of your expenses, and more specifically how your expenses or your understanding of your expenses can impact your decision making in business. Okay, so in business, there are 2 different types of expenses that will be taken into consideration. So there are variable expenses and there are fixed expenses. Variable expenses means that those numbers are going to change. They're not set in stone. So for example, when we choose to run ads, we're choosing how much money we're going to spend and how long we're going to run those ads. Nothing controls that other than what we choose to spend. It's not set. But for example, my rent is a fixed expense. It's set, it's the same every single month. So any expense that is exactly the same every single month is fixed. Anything that you have control over is variable. So one thing that you want to understand as a business owner is what your expenses are and break them out pertaining to variable expenses and fixed expenses. You want to understand what's fixed, and that's going to be money that you know for a fact you have to make. You have to make this money to be able to cover your expenses, because there's no way of changing them. There's no way of decreasing them. Your variable expenses are things that you want to monitor and make sure you are controlling them so that you're not overspending. And you also want to take into consideration, are these expenses impacting your revenue or impacting your business positively? So I always use the example of Facebook ads as a variable expense, because although we control them and we choose how much we spend on them, it's also going to potentially be a direct correlation to the money that we make. If the ads are working, you might decide that you want to spend more money than you typically do in hopes of making more money than you typically do. But you also might decide you want to decrease your ad budget because they're not working as well. Or you might decide, you know, I want to only run ads for traffic and we're going to just rely on other methods to drive sales because the traffic is just not, the traffic is working, but the sales aren't coming from the ads. So you might change that expense. So I want to tell you guys what my total operating expenses were. Operating expenses are going to be all of your expenses together. So your variable expenses and your fixed expenses all together in total, all the money that you paid. And really your expenses are the money that it took to run your business. So like, how much money did I have to spend to keep my business moving forward? So these are my expenses, and I'm also going to share how much money I made in revenue versus operating expenses. And operating expenses also does not include cost of goods. So just keep that in mind. So, and I think this is 2020, 2020, 21, 22. Yeah, no, wait. 2020, 2021, 2022. Okay, yeah, got it. Okay. So in 2020, I made $215,846.80, and my operating expenses were only $50,651. So I did not have an accountant just yet. I was still managing it myself. I want to say that I got my I got my warehouse at the end of the year. So I didn't have rent. I didn't have an accounting. So remember my big expenses at the top. My big expenses were cost of goods, accounting, contractors, ads, and rent. So I didn't have any rent. I didn't have accountants. I wasn't spending as much on ads. The only contractor I had was my husband and my sister, but I controlled how much money they spent. I mean, how much money I paid them because I got to choose what their schedule was and things like that. So the only thing that was fixed was really like software, Shopify, Klaviyo, like any of the softwares that I pay for every single month. So my expenses were super duper low. I made $215,000 and I spent on operating expenses outside of inventory $50,000. Then we got to 2021. 2021, I more than doubled my revenue. So I made $468,739.53. And my operating expenses were $190,324.24. Now, this is why it's important to keep track of your expenses. Because I was keeping track of my expenses, even though I was keeping track of them myself, I was able to clearly see where the money was going. So this was the first year where I had a warehouse for the whole year. My rent at the time was $1,400. I don't know what that equals out to. I want to say it was like $17,000 for the whole year. So that was an immediate increase in my operating expenses by that amount. I had an accountant for the first time for the entirety of the year. I hired my inventory strategist that year, so that became a fixed expense because she was controlling how much money she got paid. So I was able to clearly see where my money was going. But this is the thing, none of the things that I was paying for in addition to what I had before were directly tied to my ability to make money. Those were not marketing expenses or anything related to revenue. Okay, so then came 2022. I got a new accountant in 2022. That's the accountant that cost me $33,000. And again, I truly, personally don't feel that it was worth it for me. Personally, I know a ton of people, a ton of like very big boutique owners work with them, and they've worked with them for some time and they feel that it's worth it, I'm sure, because they've worked with them for some time. I just personally didn't feel like it was worth it for me at the point of business that I was at. However, what I will say is that the most valuable thing that I learned working from them was the Profit First method, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. If you haven't, there's a whole book. It's called Profit First. Highly recommend that you read it. So this was the first year where I really started to prioritize profit over revenue. So like I said at the beginning of the video, we have been kind of like conditioned to congratulate or to like champion for people who are making tons of money in appearance. Like it's like, oh my God, they have this lavish lifestyle and they said they made $1 million and so on and so forth. And they share that Shopify screenshot. But this was the first year where I was like, I don't care what Shopify says. I want to know what my profit and loss statement says. I want to know that in correlation to the amount of money that I made, that I spent a reasonable amount, and so much so that I still have money in my bank. So in 2022, I actually made less money than I did in 2021, and I was okay with that. And here's why. So as a reminder, I made $468,000 in 2021, and my operating expenses were $190,324.24. Again, not including inventory. So in 2022, I only made $291,000. I'm saying only, I know that's a big number to some people, but it's only in relation to what I made previously. So I only made $291,117.60. And my operating expenses were $171,834.20. So here's the kicker. The value in working with my accountant, again, was learning the Profit First method. However, if by the grace of God, I had learned the Profit First method on my own and kept the same accountant that I had, my operating expenses would have been lower, because I paid my new accountant $33,000 in comparison to the $7,200 that I paid my accountant the previous year, a different accountant. So I could have saved myself over $20,000 in operating expenses if I had kept the same accountant but learned the lesson of Profit First on my own. Yeah. So also at the end of 2022, that's when I got my new warehouse. I got a new warehouse. Side note, I got a new warehouse because I was kind of growing out of the space that I already had, and I also have some creative plans for how I want to utilize that new space. But my rent increased at the end of the year, which ultimately increased my expenses. So this is not a case of not being able to know how to make money. Your girl can make some money, okay? Been there, done that. The revenue is a direct indication of money made. Money that came into your bank account. Expenses is money that went out. So I know how to make money. The other half of being a successful business owner is learning how to keep some of your money. Learning how to be smart about how you spend your money. So I won't even say that I was like dumb about how I was spending the money, but more so that I was learning in real time how my spending impacted my profitability at the end of the day. So now we're in 2023. We're only in March, obviously, but I will say that I am very okay with taking things slow and making decisions from a profitable standpoint versus I want to be the biggest and baddest of the land. I don't care. I don't care, because I want to be able to say I paid myself well. I want to be able to say I paid my team well. That's another thing. I was hiring and, giving people jobs and stuff like that. I'm not mad at that. I'm so proud of the fact that I was able to afford to give people jobs. I was able to afford to pay my husband. My husband works for me full time. I was able to pay my husband. Those are things to be proud of, okay? So fast forward to 2023, I am currently at about $44,068.56, and my expenses thus far for the year, or my operating expenses thus far, are $22,988.93. And I'm going to tell you how much I've spent on inventory thus far in the next clip. Okay, so I'm just going to read from the computer because that's going to be the easiest thing to do. So like I said, for the year thus far, I'm at $44,068.56 in sales. My total cost of goods for inventory and shipping is $10,270.80. So in accounting, I'm going to just briefly explain. In accounting, first you're going to calculate all of your revenue. So money collected, so that's that $44,000. My total cost of goods is $10,270.80, which gives me a gross profit of about $34,000. But then you go and take out your operating expenses. So you want to know what your gross profit is. So your revenue minus cost of goods is going to tell you your gross profit, and then you're going to subtract your operating expenses, and that's going to tell you your net profit. So my operating expenses for the year thus far are $22,988.93. So if we subtract that $34,000 minus the $22,000, that gives me about $12,000 in net profit. So that's profit. That's like profit. Money that stayed, money that we got to keep. Not mad at that. And that's outside of being paid, paying yourself, paying your bills. Everything's paid. Nothing's behind. $12,000 left over. And I mean, I know that there are business owners out there who will be like, that's not a lot of money. But I always humbly remind myself of how much money I would have had in my bank, at the same time, if I were still working for someone else. If I was still working my last job, how much money would I have in the bank? And that's not how much money I have in the bank. Let me just say that. I have more than that, but that's for the year. I always remind myself, how much money would I have had in my bank account if I was still working? Almost always it's more than that. So I I also like looking at my number. I'm a nerd, kind of. I like looking at my numbers. I love looking at my profit and loss statements. I like to look and see what my numbers look like at the same time in the previous year. So at the same time, 2020, so January 1st to March, I keep saying it's March 12th, and it's definitely March 11th. At the same period of time in 2022, my revenue was $46,096, but my operating expenses were $34,384, and my total cost of goods was $31,000. So at this same period of time, this is where learning your numbers comes into play, guys. At this exact same time in 2022, is that right? Yeah, 2022, I was at negative for the year already. The year, negative $19,919.31. Again, bills paid, all that, but negative. And that's just money rolling over from the previous year. That's how you cover your expenses. There was money in the bank already. We made some money, but we spent some money. So we're negative. In the same period of time in 2021, my revenue was 51,000, so even more. So 2021 was more than 2022. 2022 was more than 2023. But 2023, we in the positive. We got money. We made less in revenue, but we got money in the bank. What? So 2021, I had made $51,810.81 at this same period of time. My cost of goods for inventory, $28,782.80. My operating expenses were $31,559.97, and I was at negative $8,531.96. Baby, no. No. So I just want y'all to know that, like, being a successful business owner is more than what meets the eye. It is not just Shopify screenshots. It is not just cha-chings all day. It is learning how to manage your money, learning how to be smart about your money, removing revenue as your like main goal and priority, and starting to prioritize profitability. Honestly and truly, if I had never learned to prioritize profitability, I can only imagine the position that I would be in this very moment. So I have something very special for you guys, and I truly think that it's going to be helpful. So like I mentioned, there was once upon a time where I was very apprehensive. I didn't even mention that. I was very apprehensive of hiring an accountant because, you know, the internet is filled with people saying, not even people, celebrities. Let's even say that. Like, we hear celebrities and like these big name people talk about how their accountants stole from them. Their money went missing. They owed hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in taxes and so on and so forth. And we like, for whatever reason, we adopt this like feeling of distrust. I was one of them. So I know that there are tons of people out there that are very apprehensive of hiring an accountant. You really don't know what to look for, but you may now understand the importance of managing your finances and being able to see where your money's going and where your money's coming from and things of that nature. So if that sounds like you, because I know that that was once me, I created a profit and loss template that will help you to keep track of your expenses, and you can grab yours in the description. I'll put the link down there. I created this because, one, I use a profit and loss statement to review my numbers every single month, and I currently have the luxury of my accountant creating that for me. However, this is something that we can all utilize and more specifically keep track of ourselves. I pay for the convenience of someone else doing it, but you can do it yourself. This profit and loss statement is going to allow you to plug your numbers in every single month. So you're going to plug in your revenue. You're going to plug in how much money you spent on inventory in total. You're going to plug in how much money you spent on shipping. And you're going to be able to calculate what your gross profit is. And then you're going to also put in your expenses. And it's going to really help to hold you accountable and make you more responsible to the spending decisions that you've made. So you're going to be putting in all of your expenses month over month. And what you will be able to calculate for yourself is what your net profit or your true profit is in your business. If I had something like this or even understood what a profit and loss statement was back then, I would have gotten to this $1 million in revenue, but more specifically the profit that I wanted to see, a lot quicker. So this spreadsheet or this template is a spreadsheet, and it's fully customizable. It's gonna include columns for every single month of the year. You can make a copy so you don't have to like keep purchasing it or anything like that. And it's yours to keep. I really want to encourage you guys to be responsible business owners this year and truly prioritize not just revenue, but more specifically profit, because profit is what's going to allow you to live the life that you want. Revenue sounds fun. Revenue is cute. Profit is what it's all about, honestly and truly. And you can't build a profitable business without you understanding and knowing where your money is going in your business. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. It has always been my goal to be extremely transparent with you all and to really help you to understand what it takes to not only launch but grow a successful business, and now even more so a profitable business. So again, I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what your thoughts are about, profitability and revenue and all those good things. Make sure you click the link in the description if you are interested in grabbing that profit and loss statement template. And I cannot wait to chat with y'all in the next video. Until next time, see y'all later.